He thought he knew everything about the people who worked for him. He was wrong. James Caldwell had built his company from nothing. 15 years of early mornings, late nights, and skipped vacations. By the time he was 42, he had over 200 employees, a corner office on the 12th floor, and a reputation for being fair but firm. He wasn't the kind of boss who asked about your weekend or remembered your birthday. He was the kind of boss who noticed when numbers were off and when deadlines were missed. But there was one employee he could never figure out. Her name was Sarah. She had worked in his company for 3 years, always on time, never complaining, never asking for a raise even when she clearly deserved one. Every performance review, her manager said the same thing, outstanding. Every project she touched came out better than expected. And yet something about her always felt different. She kept to herself. She never joined the team lunches. She left exactly at 5 every single day, like clockwork. James told himself it didn't matter. People have lives outside of work. That's normal. But one evening, without really planning to, everything changed. It was a Thursday. James had stayed late, like always, and was walking to his car in the parking garage when he saw Sarah moving fast toward the exit. She had 2 bags on her shoulder, her work bag and something else, a bigger one he had never noticed before. He almost called out to her, but something stopped him. Instead, without fully understanding why, he followed her. Not in a creepy way. He just wanted to know where she was going in such a hurry. He watched from a distance as she walked 3 blocks to a bus stop. She didn't take a cab. She didn't have a car. She sat down on that bench, pulled out a small notebook, and started writing. The bus came, she got on, and James stood there, on the sidewalk, feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time. Curiosity, real curiosity. The next day, he asked his assistant quietly to pull up Sarah's basic employee file. What he found was simple on paper but heavy when you really read it. Sarah was a single mother. She had a 7-year-old son named Daniel. She lived 40 minutes away by bus. And her salary, the salary James had approved 3 years ago and never revisited, was barely enough for a 2-bedroom apartment in this city. He sat with that for a moment. Then he did something he almost never did. He left his office, walked down 2 floors, and found Sarah at her desk. "Do you have 5 minutes?" he asked. She looked up, clearly surprised. "Of course." They went to a small conference room. James didn't really have a plan for what to say. He just asked her simply how things were going. Not work things, just things. Sarah paused. She wasn't used to this. Nobody in upper management had ever asked her that question and actually meant it. Slowly, she started talking. She told him that mornings were hard because she had to drop Daniel off at school before taking the bus to work. She told him that the bus ride gave her time to plan her day, which is why she always had everything organized. She told him she left at 5 because Daniel's after-school program ended at 6, and if she missed the bus, she had no backup plan, no family nearby, no one to call. James listened, really listened, and for the first time in a long time he felt ashamed. Not because he had done something terrible. He hadn't. He had never mistreated Sarah. He had never been rude to her. But he had been invisible to her struggle. He had sat 12 floors, above 200 people, and never once asked if the life they were living outside of work was okay. He had assumed that because they showed up and did their jobs, everything must be fine. That is the mistake most people in power make. They measure health by performance. If the numbers are good, the person must be fine. But that is not how humans work. Sarah wasn't just an employee pulling her weight. She was a woman carrying an entire life on her back every single day, getting on a bus with 2 bags and a notebook, and still delivering outstanding work because she had no other choice. She needed that job. She needed it badly. And she was too proud or maybe too tired to ask for more. James went back upstairs and called his HR team. Within 2 weeks, Sarah received a salary increase, and not a small one, a real one. 30%. James also approved a new policy that had been sitting on his desk for months. A flexible start time program that allowed parents and caregivers to adjust their hours by up to 45 minutes without penalty. He didn't announce it as something he did for Sarah. He announced it as something the company should have done a long time ago. But that's not where the story ends. About a month later, Sarah knocked on James's office door. She had a small card in her hand. Inside, in messy 7-year-old handwriting, It said, "Thank you for being nice to my mom." She smiles more now. James kept that card. He put it in his desk drawer, right next to his first ever business contract. Here's the part of the story that most people miss, though. James didn't just change Sarah's life. Sarah changed his. Because after that Thursday evening in the parking garage, James started doing something he had never done before. He started walking around, not to check on work, just to check on people. He started learning names he had never bothered to learn. He started asking questions that had nothing to do with quarterly targets. And what he found was that Sarah was not alone. There was a man in accounting who was secretly dealing with a sick parent and had been making small errors because of exhaustion, not carelessness. There was a young woman in marketing who had been eating lunch at her desk every day for 2 years because she couldn't afford to eat out and was too embarrassed to say so. These were not lazy people. These were not ungrateful people. These were people who had been quietly carrying heavy things while showing up every morning with a smile because they needed the paycheck and they didn't want to be seen as a problem. James had been so focused on building a successful company that he had forgotten a very basic truth. A company is not a building. It is not a logo or a revenue number. A company is people. And if the people are quietly breaking, the company is quietly breaking too. You just don't see it until something cracks. The changes James made after that weren't revolutionary. He didn't give everyone a raise overnight or turn his company into some kind of paradise. He just started paying attention. He created a small anonymous feedback system where employees could share what they needed without fear. He started reviewing salaries every year instead of every 3. He made it easier to take a mental health day without needing a doctor's note. Small things. But small things are everything when you are the person who needs them. A year later, employee turnover in his company dropped by 40%. Productivity went up. And more than that, people started staying late not because they had to, but because they wanted to. The energy in the building shifted. You could feel it. James never forgot what started it all. One evening, a parking garage, and a woman walking fast with 2 bags on her shoulder who had no idea her boss was watching and that what he saw would quietly change everything. Sometimes the most important thing a person in power can do is simply stop. Look around and ask, "What am I missing?" The answer might break your heart. But a broken heart in the right person can build something much better than what was there before.